Gen Z has been called the sober generation. I think it's pretty obvious that Zoomers drink less than the millennials and especially the boomers, but I think calling us a sober generation gives us too much credit. But sure, a huge chunk of Gen Z just completely avoids alcohol altogether. But then you have the Zoomers who do drink, and they are complete alcoholics. I'm talking daily drinkers. Then of course there's the very small section who drink alcohol the way it was intended, a glass of wine or a beer at dinner and all that. But for the most part, and from what I've seen in my life, most Zoomers don't drink at all, but the ones who do drink very heavily. I'm part of the age group that's the oldest you could possibly be to be considered a Zoomer. So when I was in high school, there were people who were older than me who were millennials, and the people in my grade were a mix of both, and below us were all Zoomers. So through the course of my life, I've had a pretty good exposure to seeing the way that Zoomers drink versus the way millennials drink. Millennials are more like that movie Superbad, where their number one goal is to get alcohol to bring to the party, whereas Zoomers are a lot like that meme where everybody's looking at you and you're totally embarrassed. Millennials would stand around and cheer on somebody while they did a keg stand and yell chug, chug, chug for them, and basically they'd be the life of the party for drinking so much. But you'd be a lot less likely to see Zoomers engaged in that kind of activity, most likely because people are too aware that they're going to be caught on 4K when everybody whips out their phone. So the concept of getting completely shit-faced plastered and waking up having forgotten everything that happened the night before has become more of a social taboo while younger generations are online more. Instead of waking up and being like, what happened last night? They wake up, check their phone, and they can see what happened last night. So as a result, the Zoomers get together and drink socially much less. And so the Zoomers who are drinking are doing it alone, and they're doing it just for the effects that the alcohol has on them, not to enhance some kind of experience that they're partaking in. A lot of bars and clubs have actually been cooked by this. Aside from the fact that bars and clubs are fucking expensive, nobody wants to go to them, and the Zoomers aren't showing up to fill in the empty seats. A similar thing is happening to the alcoholic beverage industry. There's that now infamous leaked quote from the CEO of Bud Light where she said, if we don't get Zoomers drinking Bud Light, then the company's going out of business. And that makes sense to me. You don't necessarily see the Zoomers going out and partying with a 30 rack of Bud Light. They're probably more likely to buy a bottle of Grey Goose and hang out in their bedroom. A lot of the Gen Zers who do drink are probably doing it because they're so depressed when they look out at the state of the world that they're drinking as a coping mechanism. So you got kind of a perfect storm where there's a lack of opportunities to have fun drinking, and the Zoomers who are drinking are doing it like professionally. So I'm less inclined to think of Gen Z as this miracle generation who've come out all of a sudden as super health conscious and are putting down the alcohol because they're ending some sort of generational struggle with alcoholism. I'm more inclined to think that Gen Z just have more options these days. Weed is legal most places, so there's that. And there's also something to be said about how there's a good portion of Gen Zers who are very conscious about the diet that they have, the calories that they're taking in, and the overall vitamins and supplement routine that they're on. Introducing any amount of alcohol to that is basically just throwing it all out the window. And then you've got the other side of the coin, the Gen Z cohort that just don't give a fuck and are drinking as much as they want because that's what they want to do. And also, from what I've seen, a lot of the Zoomers who do the Sober October challenge or like 30 days with no drinking to clear out your system, they'll hit the bottle super hard once those 30 days are up. And it's usually not a wine bottle either. It's usually stone cold hard liquor. So that concept of having one glass of wine at the family dinner is completely out the window. The whole concept of gathering around the family dinner table to enjoy a meal once a day is sort of going by the wayside too, unfortunately. The modern version of that is like slamming down a bottle of alcohol or having the DoorDash guy show up while you're in between shots. On a broader scale, Zoomers just aren't getting introduced to drinking as a social norm. It's more of a social taboo when you think about it. A lot of those anti-drinking ad campaigns and propaganda that we were subjected to since a young age took a big effect on the larger portion of Gen Z. I mean, sure, we'll get the Nelk boys trying to push alcoholism on younger generations quite a bit, but for the most part, you don't really see influencers chugging bottles of vodka like you did in the old days. Social media sites are pretty stingy about the alcohol-related content that they allow on their platforms these days. I mean, there's no shortage of alcohol advertising online, but gone are the days of Shoe Nice. The boomers had movies like Animal House, the millennials had movies like Superbad, and Gen Z, for the most part, just gets ad campaigns that are anti-alcohol. And I'd say that while seeing one anti-drinking ad might not be enough to get somebody to stop doing it, the constant bombardment that we've had, the steady stream of anti-drinking propaganda we as a generation have been subjected to since birth has had sort of a hypnotic effect on Gen Z, to the effect where now we're not necessarily a drinking generation. There's a large portion who avoid alcohol altogether, and then there's the subgroup that does enough drinking for all of us. And I could say from personal experience, I've been on both sides of this. At one point, I used to love alcohol. I used to drink all the time, but now I don't even have a drop of alcohol. And I don't consider myself some sort of reformed alcoholic or something like that. No, I just literally lost interest in it one day. It's not like there was some big cataclysmic event in my life that made me change my ways. I mean, throughout most of my life, I didn't drink altogether, and then all of a sudden the 2020 lockdowns happened, and then that's when I really got into it. And then it stuck with me for a few years after that. I was really into it because I liked drinking. And I suspect that there's a lot of other Zoomers and people in general who started drinking around that time, and many of them probably haven't even broken out of it, even though it's been 6 years. Shit, in 2020, they were basically pushing alcoholism on us. And then once you get in the rhythm of it, time flies by surprisingly quick. And I think that was sort of a universal experience for a good chunk of Zoomers, and I'd imagine there's a lot of Zoomers who are still stuck in a cycle similar to mine. And don't worry, this isn't the part of the video where I'm going to start preaching about why you need to quit alcohol, but I will say this, I personally believe that alcohol is the worst drug around right now, just because it's so readily available and it's socially accepted by society. But I know most of you didn't come to a COD commentary video for advice on your drinking habits. Just keep in mind that it could ruin your life in literally 5 seconds. So that about wraps it up. I am working on a new video that's about how bars and clubs are cooked these days, but that's such a long video and it's a story for another day. I didn't want to get it confused with this topic too much. So feel free to subscribe to get notified when that one drops. Anyways, I appreciate y'all watching all the way to the end. This is Avery Yapps signing out.